timeframe, since they're starting with 2170s as we know. As for more general production-related updates, he said that last year the chip shortage was quote-unquote so bad, and they went right into the COVID shutdowns with China, which he said people didn't fully appreciate how impactful those lockdowns were. I think we understand that better than most. Again, not just impacting what they could produce at Giga Shanghai, but also affecting production elsewhere. And then he did also note that the lockdowns were not quite done yet, by the way, that there was not yet a full green light, but this interview was 3 years ago, so it's a good reminder, and things have definitely changed quite a bit since then. Moving on to a couple of vehicle updates on the Cybertruck, Elon did say that the design is now finally locked for sure. And as for the start of production, Elon said, quote, "I think the middle of next year, roughly 12 months-ish," quote. So since we have seen this slip a couple of times, it's nice to have that reaffirmation, especially after some of the comments Tesla has made on the 4680 RAM. Obviously, things could still change, but good to see that as we get closer in, and especially good news that the design is completely finalized. Elon also had a couple of interesting comments on the Model 3 and the Model Y. He was talking about the S and the X and their volume capping out at around 100,000. He said that the Model 3 and Y will do 2 million plus annual deliveries. That would be more than double the roughly 900,000 from last year. And then he added that they could probably do 3 to 4 million. If you look at Tesla's factory plans, it's pretty clear that they're looking for 2.5 million plus. So a number like that may sound surprising to many, but if you follow Tesla closely, it shouldn't really be too surprising. Of course, that's much more important than Giga Berlin and Giga Texas being quote-unquote money furnaces right now. But I think we all know between those two, which is more likely to get more media attention. Anyway, also on the Model 3, Elon was asked if they had plans for a plaid Model 3, and Elon said,
"You have my support."
Alright, last big section of the interview was a lot of comments on FSD. He said right now the goal is to get to point-to-point in cities with 0 interventions, and he still thinks Tesla is tracking for that this year. Quite a bit of discussion on the removal of radar. He said that decision was controversial, but now nobody wants it back. He said that radar removal made them realize that the neural networks they were using for vision were worse than they thought they were, because radar was running them at a crutch, but that was never going to get them to where they needed to be, so relying on it was a mistake. He lamented a little bit that they still don't have a unified vector space like they had talked about wanting to get to at AI Day last year, so they're still working hard on that. It would seem that Elon expects that to be done very soon if he still expects full FSD this year. Then they talked a little bit about labeling. Elon noted that they've got somewhere around 1,500 human labelers, but those are amplified 100 times to 1,000 times because of auto labeling. That's dramatically increasing the number of clips that they're able to put through. And as he said before, the reason they're able to do that is because of a lot of in-house software that Tesla themselves have built. Elon noted that as far as he can tell, no one really appears to be pursuing the same strategy for autonomy that Tesla is doing, which of course they believe is really the only way to accomplish it. So he said that Tesla will probably have a 5-year lead at least in autonomy once they do solve it, which again, he remains confident in. As I said before, FSD and getting Starship to orbit are taking up the majority of his bandwidth, so about 70% of his brain space. And remember, that's with all the issues and challenges that we've talked about with the new factories. So a lot of focus on FSD, and then just a couple of last items here. He said that they haven't really thought too much about ride sharing pre-robotaxi. It's just too low of a priority given the other things that they have to do. And they also talked a little bit about how robotaxi fleets would eventually look. As Elon said, they'll probably need to have things kind of like a shepherd to care for small fleets of vehicles, things like cleaning, general upkeep, that sort of stuff. Probably the last thing to highlight, they did talk a little bit about journalism and advertising, creating an incentive for journalists to not trash the company that is essentially paying their bills. That works against Tesla right now because Tesla doesn't do any advertising. Elon said that at some point maybe it makes some sense to do some advertising to even just combat that.
Special delivery!
Looks like Tesla sales have not been hurt by any of this bad press so far, so maybe it's not actually worth it after all. Don't want to get into a whole debate on that. We've talked about that subject many times. Just passing on to those recent thoughts. Alright, next up today we've got some reporting on Giga Shanghai that seems to have caused quite a bit of confusion, so I want to clarify what's going on here. If you've been listening closely to Tesla Daily, hopefully none of this is too surprising to you, but Reuters is reporting today that Tesla is planning to suspend most production at its Giga Shanghai plants in the first 2 weeks of July to work on an upgrade to the site, according to an internal memo sent by Reuters. So we've got that Reuters report, and then separately we've got a report here from 42 Power, shared by 42 Power out of China, that Tesla will stop production and renovation from July 1st to July 4th at Shanghai for a line upgrade for Model Y. Alright, great. So now we've got confusion. We've got people attacking Reuters, saying that that's fake news, accusing them of being misleading, but let's please use a little bit of critical thought here, and again, context highlights from what had previously reported was that this upgrade was originally planned for April. Of course, the lockdowns then happened. Tesla couldn't do it in April. They then planned to split it between May and July, so as not to put all that downtime in the second quarter. The lockdowns extended, and then Tesla just decided to move it all into July. Now, if this were only going to be a 4-day shutdown, Tesla would have just done it in May. There never would have been a planned split between May and July while we put up 4 days. Doesn't make any sense. You would just do the 4 days, and then the resulting higher production output would have already made up for such a short lost period of time in the second quarter alone. So 4 days doesn't really make sense. If we look at the source material, which Gary Black already went to the trouble of translating the image for, it says in order to cooperate with the function upgrade and transformation of the superfactory, the whole factory needs to be powered off from July 1st. The whole factory being powered off, that's a different thing from the entirety of the upgrade being completed. So there's nuance here. Tesla has multiple production lines at Giga Shanghai. Looks like what's going to happen is the entire factory being shut down from the 1st to the 4th. Then maybe for a couple of weeks they will be upgrading phase 2, so on the Y line, but perhaps still operating phase 1. And then when phase 2 is upgraded, maybe they switch. And in that case, across both lines, on average, we're going to shut down for a couple of weeks. So yeah, maybe the entire factory is going to shut down from July 1st through July 15th, but we still need to be accounting for 2 probably solid downtime there for July. This is what I've been reporting. This is what I've been modeling for quite some time. So believe me, I don't love being in the position of having to defend Reuters by any means, but a lot of times it just seems like the Tesla community is way too quick to write off anything that is a little bit more negative, even though this really isn't. This is exactly what we should have been expecting. Anyway, the most important part is that output is going to increase. Reuters here says that Tesla is targeting 22,000 per week after this upgrade is complete. That also lines up with other reports that we've seen. For a full quarter, without a shutdown, so not Q3, that could be 275,000 cars a quarter, or 1.1 million a year. So, very exciting stuff, but yes, we should be expecting a little bit of a dip in production in July. The nice thing about that is that it should give Tesla suppliers time to build some backlog inventory or make some upgrades to their production processes as well. Alright, next up we've got a couple of analyst updates. First, here from Adam Jonas of Morgan Stanley. He has lowered today his price target after keeping it for so long to $1,200 per share from $1,300. He's attributing this to lower Q2 forecasts. He's expecting now 270,000 units being delivered versus 360,000 previously. I don't think it's impossible, but I also think that's okay. But I have to kind of laugh at the explanation here. He says, estimates from evvolumes.com have Tesla delivering 254,000 units in Q2, but we have allowed for some modicum of upside to this estimate, given the historic ability of Tesla to significantly increase production/sales in the latter weeks of a given quarter. Jonas then talks about the split between the first 2 months of the quarter and the last month of the quarter, the percent of sales that happened in the last month, according to EV volumes, and he cites EV volumes estimate for the first 2 months of this quarter, and then seems to just extrapolate off those historical ranges, ignoring all the context that makes this quarter unique. So anyway, just kind of pointing this out because I think it gives maybe some good insight into how some of these numbers come to be from some analysts. Anyway, he also notes that in their model they've increased the average cost of capital to 9% from 8.5% previously, and I guess although they did lower that estimates here, that they said, he says that this is responsible for approximately 100% of the price target decline. We've also got an update today from CFRA analyst Garrett Nelson, and although he also has a $1,200 price target on the stock, it is a different tone. He says that this drop in Tesla has created a generational investment opportunity. Alright, moving on from the analyst updates, a couple more interesting things here. First, Tesla this week has been recruiting at the annual conference on computer vision and pattern recognition, CVPR. They brought the Tesla Cybertruck along, and although this is a very heavily represented conference, major companies like Google, Apple, Meta, Tesla actually has the biggest booth out of any of them. That booth size is the be-all end-all of anything, but certainly Tesla commanding a lot of attention in the space, especially with the Cybertruck there. Probably a good time to echo the refrain that Tesla is not just a car company. Alright, next we've got a quick pricing update. Nothing major here, but as we talked about last week with the price changes, we weren't sure if Tesla had raised the price on the Texas-made Model Y. According to regular Phantom 17 373, it looks like Tesla has increased the base price on that base version $2,000 up to $61,990. Obviously, it's not on the design studio yet, so it'd be nice to have some second confirmation of that, but it does seem like those price changes affected this version too. Also possibly relevant to pricing, Bloomberg last night reporting that in an effort to continue to work towards a spending deal structured off some of the pieces of the Build Back Better plan, Senate Democrats have scrapped a $4,500 bonus tax credit for electric vehicles made by domestic human labor from a possible updated EV tax credit system. So obviously I think cutting that piece out is positive. I don't want to spend too much more time on it considering how much that last year until and if it seems like things are a little bit further along. I don't want to get anybody's hopes up for a tax credit because I really don't know exactly what the status is right now. Personally, this seems like a very bad time to increase any incentives for electric vehicles given order backlogs and the inflation situation. But hey, if you want to push Tesla's margins to 30%, I guess go ahead. Just seems like a very poor use of resources. Yeah, maybe it helps other automakers a little bit. Maybe it trickles down into the supply chain a little bit. Convinces more investment, but I don't really think those are the issues right now. So we'll see. I'll keep an eye out for any developments on that. And then last item for today, we've got an update on the flooring company. They have submitted an application to potentially build a tunnel in the vicinity of Giga Texas. We don't know exactly what the location might be or where the tunnel might go. What the benefit of it would be. The project name is the Colorado River Connector Tunnel. You can see on Google Maps here where that is relative to the factory. Maybe Tesla could run that under the river and over to the airport, although that's a long drive anyway. So we'll have to wait and see on that and if it even gets approved. So that's where we'll leave it for today. As always, thank you for listening. Make sure you subscribe and sign up for notifications. You can also find me on Twitter at Tesla Podcast. And we'll see you tomorrow for the Thursday review of the third episode of Tesla Daily. Thank you. Hey everybody, Rob Mauer here. Welcome back to Tesla Daily. Hope everybody had a great weekend. Today we are talking about a new Elon Musk interview. We also got an update on the production rate of Giga Berlin, news on China, the US, news on charging, and a couple other items as well. Really nice day in the markets today to start the week off. Tesla today up 9.4% to close at $711.11. The Nasdaq up 2.5%. While Tesla did trail off a little bit towards the end of the day, still the third best performance so far this year, and the fourth best day in the last 12 months. And this was on relatively high volume today too, with over 40 million shares of Tesla trading hands. I think days like today where the stock shoots up when there's not really all that much news are really great times to check in on your own psychology, because a lot of times positive days like today can bring back a lot of the bullish feelings on a stock that maybe weren't there a few days ago, even though not really all that much has actually changed. The point isn't that those things are invalid, it's just a reflection on how feelings and sometimes can amplify what's actually going on in the market. Those sorts of feelings work just as strongly, if not stronger, on the way down. So really the point is that if you're recognizing those feelings on the way up, make sure you're recognizing them on the way down and not overreacting to other days. I want to say that because I think that we have seen a lot of that in the last few months. Alright, moving on from that, I want to start off with an update on Giga Berlin. This was announced by Tesla on Friday, but after our episodes, I want to catch up here. Tesla announced that last week Giga Berlin produced 1,000 vehicles over the course of the week. Elon had previously alluded that they were getting close to this rate, so good to have that confirmation. An encouraging milestone, and historically we have seen Tesla go on to continue to ramp very quickly from this point. Of course, the last ramp of an entirely new factory that we have to compare to would have been your Shanghai. So I dug through some of my old charts here for comparison's sake, and the Shanghai ramp was a little bit funky because we had the Chinese New Year in the middle of it, we had COVID interruptions, so there were a couple of periods during that ramp where the factory was closed. In this chart, I had excluded those periods, so it's something to keep in mind, but Shanghai started production basically in December of 2019 and then ramped up in Q1 to hit an average production rate of about 1,500 vehicles per week, excluding those couple of weeks of factory shutdowns. Took them about 3 more months to double from there, and then about 6 more months to double again up to 5,000 per week and hitting that true level volume production basically within a year. So we're still pretty early in the story for Giga Berlin, but if we kind of plot that in comparison here, Berlin right now is looking to be a fair amount behind the pace of the production ramp from Shanghai, even if we consider late March as the start of true production, which actually gave Tesla quite a bit of time to work on production before that as they awaited final permitting. So for this quarter, Tesla will probably average a decent amount below 1,000 per week over the entirety of the quarter, since they're just now hitting that rate. That's what we got plotted here. I definitely think it's fair to be a little bit disappointed in this, but there are still a lot of outstanding questions that need to be answered. How much of this slow ramp has been due to supply constraints? And the biggest question of all, where do things go from here? Is this an indication that the ramp will continue to be slower, or will Tesla catch up and it's just a delayed curve by 3 months or something, in which case, who really cares? If you get a really solid answer on that, it's going to be another 3 or 4 months at least. And once you have that answer, that will inform how the forecasts shape out for next year to a large degree. Looking at the Shanghai ramp, I think the expectations would be for Berlin to at least double this production rate over the next 3 months. Keeping an eye on that is much more important to where Tesla as a stock goes than anything in the Q2 results, in my opinion. Maybe margin being an exception, so something we'll continue to keep a close eye on. By the way, for Q2 and for the rest of the year, I did update my forecast this weekend based on this information and other things like Bitcoin impairment, so that is now out for annual members on trailoff.com. Of course, we'll go through deliveries for Q2 and earnings for Q2 like we normally do on the podcast later on. And next Next, we're going to walk through the highlights from a new Elon Musk interview at the Qatar Economic Forum. This was posted by Bloomberg, a pretty quick 20-minute rapid-fire interview here. I'll put a link that I was able to find to the video in the description today. We'll start off with the Tesla-specific comments, and one that I had to kind of laugh at was Bloomberg talking about forecasts for Volkswagen to pass Tesla in EV sales by as early as 2024. And Elon kind of chuckled and said, "Wasn't that your guys' forecast?" And he said, quote, "I would not agree with that forecast. No," end quote. I'm not sure exactly what caused this to get so much attention over this weekend, but even before this interview, it seemed like there were a ton of articles that had covered this as an offshoot of Bloomberg's original report, which came out on June 14th. The gist of that report was Bloomberg's own forecast for EV sales through 2025 by brand. I thought maybe this was an analyst consensus number, but Bloomberg says that the BI report specifically forecasts automakers' battery vehicle sales up to 2025, so I think it's just their own forecast. And they have Volkswagen at slightly above 2 million in 2024, and Tesla just below them, but also slightly above 3 million, which is pretty funny because Tesla's actual production capacity in Q4 this year, 2022, will probably be at about that level, and if not, certainly would be within 6 months. So they're basically projecting a doubling for Volkswagen and basically no growth for Tesla. Sure, great forecast. I'll echo Elon there and say that I would not agree with that
trying to steal my story.
Anyway, Elon noted that from a Tesla perspective, they don't really care about other manufacturers or competitors. Their constraints are much more raw materials and being able to scale production, not constrained by what competition. The next Tesla-related point was on layoffs. I just want to clarify here that reducing salaried employees by 10% will happen in the next 3 months or so. He said that Tesla is about 2/3 salaried employees and 1/3 salary, so about 3 to 3.5% reduction in total headcount. Outlets are trying to spin this as new information, but it's not. If you go back to our episode on layoffs, we talked about this exact thing, and Elon again re-emphasized that total headcount for Tesla would continue to grow. Basically, they just got too overstaffed too quickly in some specific salaried areas. Next, he was asked about the Tesla bot. This might be the most interesting part. He said that they hope to have a bot prototype by AIDC, and I quote, "I think we are tracking to that point, and there will be a few other exciting things that we'll talk about after the Tesla AI Day." Quote. So Elon had mentioned wanting to have a prototype ready by AI Day. Good to see that they are still tracking towards that, and we'll wait to see what those other exciting things might be. I imagine we'll have some sort of an update on FSD, probably Dojo, anybody's guess beyond that. Elon was also asked about cryptocurrency. Of course, this affects us because of Bitcoin impairments. About Bitcoin, Elon did say, and emphasis on mine here, quote, "It is a small percentage of our total cash or near cash assets," end quote. I was using present tense there, which to me implies that Tesla is still holding its Bitcoin position. I know some people have hoped that maybe Tesla had sold it off before the bid, but to me, it sounds like Tesla does still have their Bitcoin, so maybe they sold a part of it. My guess is not. Elon did also note that he does intend to continue to support Doge. A couple of other quick general points. Elon did say about a recession that at some point a recession is inevitable. That wasn't really a reflection on where we're at today, just basically stating a fact that, hey, recessions come around sometime, but he did say that recession in the near term is, quote, more likely than not, quote. Elon was also, of course, asked about politics and specifically if he would vote for Trump. He said he was undecided on the election. He also was asked about his super moderate super PAC, and he said he might do $20 to $25 million for that super PAC. We talked quite a bit about Twitter. We'll sum that up really quickly here. He said there are still a few unresolved matters, still waiting for a resolution on thoughts, the question of the debt portion of the round, if that will come together, and then a shareholder vote. Of course, that is still contingent on the question of whether or not he would be CEO. He again said it doesn't matter, but he would drop the product. And to wrap up with the interview, and then also with Twitter, we did have another announcement from Twitter today, and we talked this statement that the board of directors has unanimously determined that the merger is advisable, so they are recommending shareholders vote for it. For the most part, that has pretty much been stated, so no surprise there. Alright, next I want to spend a couple of minutes on Tesla in China. Over the weekend, we've had some numbers come out, causing a little bit of confusion. This is the number of Teslas insured over the last week. So Moneyball on Twitter reported that from June 13th to June 19th, there were about 18,000 new China vehicles insured. As we can see, the previous week, June 6th and June 12th, was at 18,200. And if we go back 1 week further, May 30th through June 5th, that was just under 10,000. So 2 points I want to make on this. One, I previously made insured units. That's not necessarily the exact same thing as sales or as deliveries. I haven't tracked insured units historically, but it is a distinct metric from the CPCA-reported sales that we get. Those numbers were identical. I don't see any reason why they would differentiate them. It's important to understand that those are not necessarily interchangeable, and there's likely some shifting in time between a sale and an insured unit. And then the other more important point is that for such short periods of time, like a few weeks, insured insured units doesn't necessarily tell us much about production because vehicles can lag in terms of when they're produced when they're delivered. Of course, we care the most about production is most informative about the situation going forward. This is particularly important to understand for June because in April and May, Tesla produced more than 10,500 vehicles more than they delivered. That means that June deliveries for insured units, whatever, those should all be outpacing production, likely in a pretty significant degree. So I've mentioned this before, but just be very careful when using any numbers like this to try to learn anything about production. And then the other kind of clarification I want to make here is on a tweet that I saw that got a lot of attention. This was again from Chris Young, who tweeted this morning that as of June 19th, Tesla China delivered 46,012 units every month. This is not accurate because if we go back and we look at those tweets from Moneyball, we add up those 3 weeks, that total insured units came out to 46,012 units. So we're talking about insured units here, not deliveries, and that also included May 30th and May 31st. So if you're going to try to do an extrapolation from that, you need to at least take off probably 2,000 or 3,000 units to account for those 2 days in May. And again, remember these are insured units, not necessarily deliveries, or certainly not production. So hopefully that helps clarify what's going on there a little bit. And then on production, we talked last week about the rumor from Lula that Tesla was hitting 3,000 vehicles per day. We did a little bit more on that, but my understanding is that Tesla is right now at about 2,700 per day. When we get to 3,000, so we'll do the upgrades, which are scheduled for July. Still, even at 2,700 per day, if Tesla can maintain that kind of production, that will still lead to some upside to that 71,000 vehicle production target that we had previously. Alright, moving on from China and back over to the US, we got an update from Cars.com on their American-made index. Of course, the Model 3 topped this list last year, and it has been supplanted, but been supplanted by the Tesla Model Y. For Cars.com research, the Model Y and the Model 3 are the 2 most American-made vehicles in the country. The Lincoln Corsair is number 3, and I guess the fittingly named Honda Passport is number 4, but then you got the X and the S at 5 and 6. So nice to see, and would be even nicer to see Tesla get some credit for it. Last few stories here. First, we got an update on the new Texas-made Model Y. First, we know the listed 0 to 60 on that vehicle is 5.0 seconds. According to spoken reviews on YouTube, Tesla is offering the acceleration boost for this vehicle, although the app says that it will take the acceleration from 4.8 seconds to 4.2 seconds, so it doesn't necessarily match up. Could be an error here. Maybe it goes to 4.2, maybe it goes to 4.4, maybe it's not even actually being offered at all, but we should find out soon. They said that they are going to test the 0 to 60 forward and then try to get upgrade and see what that does after. So more to come on that, and then we've also got more news on the Mega Charger at the Cleo Lane facility. They're in Destin, California. Tesla got it this time. Got some up-close photos of the Mega Charger so we can see the connector. Among the electrical specifications here, Tesla says there are 4 750 kilowatt Mega Chargers. So I guess for at least this station, that would appear to be their power output. We've also got another piece of news coming over here from Tesla Body. They are reporting that a new plan from the Texas Department of Transportation is setting aside $408 million for EV charging infrastructure over the next 5 years. That seems similar to the federal plans that we discussed. They're looking to build charging infrastructure every 50 miles along major interstate routes. Last few really good things here then. NVIDIA has announced that they are extending their open house 2 weeks for the 9,000 pound big press, so I guess we'll add a couple more weeks onto when Tesla could receive that at the earliest. We're probably now looking at sometime in October, at the earliest. And then lastly, last week we had talked about the design company Hillshausen, run by Hans von Hillshausen, Tesla's chief designer's wife, using a thermal engineer for the Model S. That is going to be a market option in partnership with Unplugged Performance. No change to the design studio coming there, just wanted to close that loop. That package will start at $30,000. Alright, so with that, we'll close it out for today. As always, thank you for listening. Make sure to subscribe and sign up for notifications. Also find me on Twitter at Tesla Podcast. And we'll see you tomorrow for the Wednesday to 22nd episode of Tesla Daily. Thank you.
It's also clear to me now that turtles are my friends.
To 2.9%.
System
Countries could
crash.
fall into recession.
Outstanding, Hawk Player.
None of us can be completely sure that we or our families are not going to be among those victims.
Tonight, I dine on turtle soup.
like the value of your house or the value of your car. And last but not least, it's that really most important one, that increase in the unemployment rate, where people really fear that they could lose a job and thus lose income.
I do believe recessions are really inevitable.
Dinosaur stampede!
But some believe that this is not bad news.
Some investors, they look at
Craig's legs are going to the museum?
and now we have fear. I think it's really important.
Yeah! Go!
Power.
Special delivery!
So why do recessions happen? And are they an inevitable part of the American economy? The National Bureau of Economic Research defines a recession as a significant decline in economic activity that's spread across the economy and lasts more than a few months. It's been synonymous with a major economic pain felt by businesses and consumers alike. National Research Service cites three main causes of the recession. The first is overheating the economy. A hot spike in inflation, alongside a dip in the unemployment rate, could signal that the economy may be overheating.
Special delivery!
Recession reforms will take a seeming inflation peak right before the start of the recession. In nearly every recession since World War II, saw the unemployment rate fall to 5% or lower.
Total bummer, dudes! Prepare for ninja revenge!
So you get a positive feedback between wages moving higher, prices higher, wages higher, prices, and it's the Federal Reserve intervene by increasing
This is gonna get me a
Special
major promotion.
delivery!
and eventually you have it walking away and really getting out of it.
Asset bubbles can be a major cause. The recession of 2001 was primarily caused by the dot-com bubble burst of 2000, while the Great Recession occurred just after the crash of the housing market.
Stock prices and house prices go up a lot, and they hit the fundamental, and then suddenly they come down. And big negative effect. Particularly people who borrow.
When that happens, you find out and you find out that
And other times, recessions are caused by unpredictable events that lead to severe disruption. We call these events black swans. The U.S. has experienced at least 30 recessions throughout history, dating back to the year 1777. They may have become an inevitable part of the economic cycle, especially in periods of inflation and contraction.
Dig it!
It's also nature that people continue expanding their firms and businesses as long as the economy is good. As long as they keep expanding, you'll eventually overheat.
Thanks for the help, Cats.
It's the difference between
Total bummer, dude.
versus trying to land an airplane very, very narrow with rocks and water on it.
Select your hero.
Some experts argue that policies have a fitting limitation on what they can achieve against the impending downturn.
This is April O'Neil, reporting live.
I also think that increasingly we live in a global economy.
Dinosaur stampede!
That are impacting, the economic dynamics are very complex. These are dynamics that the Fed doesn't have control over. And so, I think that the policymakers, is developing more tools to fight.
Go.
There are several those sectors investors account.
One tool that's yield curve, right? The yield curve. When the yield curve tends to invert, it means that people expect that the bond market expects interest rates higher in the short term than it does
Glory to the Triceratop Pen!